Gen Z is the first generation that grew up knowing exactly how money works. They know about inflation. They know about compound interest. They know about the wealth gap and the housing crisis and the broken system. They've watched every video. They've seen every stat. They can tell you exactly why things are unfair. And that's the exact same reason so many of them are gonna stay poor forever. Because now everybody knows what's possible. Everybody has seen the clips. Some 22-year-old talking about his index fund portfolio. Some guy explaining exactly how the rich get richer. Some girl breaking down why rent is unaffordable. Some dude in a hoodie explaining the entire system step by step from his bedroom. So now the average Gen Z person looks at their bank account and thinks, I know exactly what's wrong and exactly what I should be doing. To be honest, that thought is not even wrong. The information is real. The opportunities are real. The problem is what happens next. Most of what Gen Z understands about money is correct. The system is harder than it was. Housing is unaffordable. Wages haven't kept up. Student debt is a real anchor. Healthcare is a trap. That part is true. The problem is what most people do with that understanding. They don't get motivated by it. They get comfortable with it. They use it as a reason to stop. They stop respecting the slow path because they know it's broken. They stop respecting discipline because the system feels rigged anyway. They stop respecting the boring parts because why bother? It's all stacked against you. And then they jump into some money path they saw online with the worst mindset possible. They want the result. They don't want the buildup. They want to call themselves financially aware after watching 6 videos. They want to say they're building wealth when all they did was download a brokerage app and never open it again. That's a trap. Gen Z is too aware of how unfair the system is and too comfortable using that as an excuse to do nothing. That combination doesn't create change. It creates broke people who are really good at explaining why they're broke. That's why so many of this generation are in such a bad spot. They mentally quit the traditional path because they know it's broken. Then they fail to actually build anything on the alternative path. Now they're stuck in the middle. The middle is where most people stay broke for years. I've seen it so many times. Someone finds out about investing. For the first week, they're on fire. They open the account. They put some money in. They're talking about financial independence. They're talking about retiring early. They're sharing posts about compound interest like they just discovered electricity. And then reality shows up. They realize they have to actually cut their spending. They have to automate their investments and not touch them. They have to watch the account go down and not panic. They have to do the same boring thing every single month with no immediate reward, no applause, no progress you can see. And that's where almost all of them disappear. They close the app. They stop thinking about it. They tell themselves they'll get back to it later, and later never comes. The exact same thing happens with building a side income, learning a skill, starting something on the side. Same story every time. People love the idea of being financially free. They hate the daily reality of building toward it. And here's where the real damage happens. It's not just that they fail, it's that they fail after already giving up on the traditional path. Before the internet, most people had one clean path in their head. Get a job, save money, build up slowly. It wasn't exciting, but it worked for a lot of people. Now that path has competition. A Gen Z person sees someone their age talking about passive income, and suddenly, saving $200 a month from a regular job feels pointless. Why grind the slow, boring path when people are building real wealth online? So what happens? They stop taking the traditional path seriously. They half-heartedly try the alternative. Then they quit that too. And now they're just floating. No real savings. No real skill being built. No discipline. No direction. Still spending. Still scrolling. Still saying they'll figure it out next month. That's the version of Gen Z that is gonna stay broke forever. Not because the opportunities aren't real, but because they ruin both options at the same time. They mentally checked out of one path and physically quit the other. And the place you end up when you do both of those things is exactly where most of this generation is right now. Here's what's actually driving all of this underneath. This generation is addicted to speed. Not drugs, not alcohol. Speed, instant feedback, instant results, instant gratification. They grew up in an environment where everything moves fast. Swipe, click, skip, next. The algorithm always has something new. The feed never stops, and your brain gets rewired to expect that pace from everything. And then real wealth building shows up. And real wealth building is the opposite of fast. It's putting $200 into an index fund and watching it do basically nothing for months. It's learning a skill for 6 months before you make a single dollar from it. It's saying no to things that feel good now so you have options later. It's doing the same thing over and over with no visible progress for so long that most people just stop. When real progress asks you to do the same hard thing for 6 months with no applause, a generation wired for instant feedback simply can't do it. They go back to scrolling, back to talking about what they're gonna do, back to watching another video about someone who already did it, back to saying they'll lock in next month. That's why they stay poor. Not because the tools don't exist, not because the information isn't there, but because they keep consuming the life they refuse to build. And every hour spent watching someone else win is an hour not spent building anything of your own. So what's actually going on here? What is the real problem underneath all of this? The real problem is that this generation is soft. Yeah, that's the word. Soft. They want financial freedom, but they have no tolerance for the boring parts. They want to build wealth, but they still live like comfort comes first. They want results, but the second the thing stops being exciting, they're gone. They say they're serious about money, but their spending says something completely different. Look at how the average Gen Z person actually spends. DoorDash 4 times a week, a phone bill they haven't questioned in years, 6 streaming subscriptions, rent in a city they chose because it looked good, not because it made financial sense, new clothes they didn't need, going out every weekend because saying no feels like missing out. None of that is the system's fault. That's just choices. And every one of those choices is directly competing with building anything real. You have zero respect for the person who says, I want to build wealth, but spends every dollar they make maintaining a lifestyle they can't afford. That's not bad luck. That's just a lack of discipline dressed up as a financial problem. The information is free. The tools are accessible. The opportunities are real. The only thing missing is the willingness to do something boring and uncomfortable for long enough that it actually works. Here's the truth about the Gen Z people who are actually building something. They're not smarter. They didn't find a secret. They didn't get lucky. They just did a few specific things differently and kept doing them when it stopped being exciting. They started before they were ready. They didn't wait until they understood everything. They didn't wait until they were making more money. They didn't wait for the perfect moment. They opened the account, put something in, and figured it out as they went. Because starting with $50 a month and building the habit is worth infinitely more than waiting until you can invest $500 and never starting at all. They automated everything. They didn't rely on motivation. They didn't trust themselves to manually transfer money to savings every month. They set it up once and made it automatic. Because motivation runs out. Systems don't. The people who build wealth aren't more disciplined than everyone else. They just built systems that don't require discipline to maintain. They stopped lifestyle inflating. Every time they got a raise, got a better job, or made more money, they didn't upgrade their lifestyle. They upgraded their investment amount. That gap between what you earn and what you spend is the only place wealth ever comes from. And the people who close that gap the moment they earn more are the ones who end up with nothing at 40, wondering where it all went. And they stopped caring about looking like they're doing well and started caring about actually doing well. Those two things pull in opposite directions. Looking rich costs money. Being rich saves it. And before someone runs to the comments saying this ignores how hard the system actually is, no, I'm saying the opposite of ignore it. Acknowledge it. Understand it completely. Know exactly what you're up against. And then do something anyway. Because complaining about a rigged game while sitting on the sidelines doesn't change the score. Take the risk. Start the thing. Open the account. Learn the skill. Make the sacrifice. Ignore the people telling you it's impossible. But once you choose a path, stop treating it like a hobby. Stop saying you want a rare outcome when your effort is completely average. Stop scrolling through other people building things while you sit there consuming it like entertainment. That's the part nobody wants to hear, and that's exactly the part that needs to be said. Gen Z can absolutely build wealth, probably easier than any generation before them. There's more free information, more accessible tools, more ways to generate income outside of a traditional job than ever before. You can invest from your phone. You can learn any skill for free. You can build an audience from your bedroom. You can earn money from anywhere in the world. This is genuinely remarkable. But none of this matters if your attention span collapses the second progress gets slow. None of it matters if you quit every time something stops being exciting. None of it matters if you keep spending money on things that feel good now at the expense of everything you say you want later. That's why this generation splits into two. A small group is going to figure it out. They're going to do the boring work. They're going to stay consistent. They're going to make real sacrifices. And they're going to build something. And right next to them are going to be 10 other people who watched the same videos, understood the same information, complained about the same broken system, and still ended up with nothing. Because they never truly committed to anything long enough for it to work. And what makes this worse is that most of the people who end up with nothing will never tell the truth about why. They'll say the market was bad. They'll say the system was rigged. They'll say investing doesn't work anymore. They'll say it's impossible to save when rent is this high. They'll say the algorithm killed their side hustle. They'll have a reason for every failure that has nothing to do with themselves. But most of the time, that's not the real reason. The real reason is that they were never built for the process. They liked the idea of being financially free. They liked the feeling of knowing what was wrong with the system. But the second the work got boring and slow and repetitive and invisible, they started slipping. They stopped showing up. They stopped taking it seriously. They slowly turned into one more person saying, I almost did that once. So no, Gen Z isn't doomed. The system being hard is real. The opportunities being there is also real. Both things are true at the same time. But if the discipline doesn't change, then yes, a lot of them will stay poor forever. Not because the world gave them no chance, but because the world gave them every tool they needed, and they used them to watch other people win, instead of building something themselves. That's the truth, and if it sounds harsh, good, it should.